Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and yes, I'm back. I'm finally back from Florida. Because as you guys know, I went to Florida. It was a choir trip that I went. It was a choir trip for my entire choir. We went to Disney World. It was a lot of fun. I definitely really enjoyed it. But I was not able to review anything while in Disney. Obviously, I wasn't gonna take time to do that. Are you kidding me? I want to have fun. I don't want to do that. Like I love doing this, guys, but I didn't have time to watch anything. I didn't have the time to. So because of that, I wasn't able to review anything. But the cool thing is now that Disney's over, now I can actually review stuff again, which is awesome because I missed a lot of TV, including last week's episode of Better Call Saul. That's why I'm reviewing this first because, guys, I meant to review it the day before I left. But here's the thing. I had so much work to catch up. I had so much work to do before I left for Disney because I had like this history assignment. I was told you have to do this before you leave for Florida. So I had to get all that done. I was not able to review Better Call Saul. That's why there was no Better Call Saul review last week, and that's why I reviewed Pretty Little Liars over Better Call Saul. But I was able to see the episode, so I am going to review it now because I did see it. I did not see this week's yet, and after this, you guys, I am going in order. My next review will be for next week's episode, last week's episode of The Flash. Guys, I'm just warning you, I'm probably not going to get any, like, I'm probably not going to be able to watch much of the live TV, like the episodes of this week on TV this week, because I just have a lot of TV to catch up on. But let's just get into this episode. This is my review for Better Call Saul, Season 1, Episode 8, Rico. And this episode was amazing. I loved this episode. Seriously, this was by far the best episode of the season. Better Call Saul seemed to be getting better and better every episode, and I love that because it really is just getting better and better as it goes on. So let's just get into this episode because, as usual, best episode of the season. It was fantastic. So I really like the way the episode started out. Actually, I thought it was really cool the way it started out. I definitely really enjoyed that because it starts off with something I've wanted to see for a while, which of course I talked about. This was Chuck being in Jimmy's where Jimmy is right now in Jimmy's position. We actually get to see the episode start off that way, which was awesome because we start with Jimmy. And he's not what he used to be. He's not a lawyer right now. In fact, he's not even really that big of a job, but he's just delivering mail. The thing I like about it is that he's really happy, though. He's having a great time doing this. It just shows, like, how much of a fun guy Jimmy really is. Like, he's just delivering the mail to everyone. He's, like, the happiest guy ever. It's awesome to see. And we see how he fits in really well with the law firm, and of course we know that he hates this law firm right now. We know that he wants nothing to do with them. We know that he hates Hamlin, all of them, and his smile fades as he reaches Kim's office, and she holds up an envelope, and he's very nervous to open this envelope. But she takes the envelope from him, and she reads the letter inside and kisses him. Now, we don't know what that is. She probably got some sort of promotion or something. We don't exactly know what happened, but he then goes to Chuck's office, and I love this scene because we have yet to see Chuck not be completely terrified of electricity and things like that. We have yet to see that. So seeing Chuck in this position, I think really made us care more about Chuck's character. Definitely I care more about Chuck's character in this scene. I thought this was very well done what they did here, and I love this. Because he goes to Chuck's office next, and Chuck is basically the picture of healthy. He is about as healthy as it can get. Because he's sitting in his corner amidst various forms of electricity. He's even using a phone to compose a letter. Like, that's how much he's, like, that's how not scared of electricity he is right now. And he interrupts him and reveals that he passed the New Mexico bar exam, and he asks if he can come work at HHM once he is sworn in. And Chuck tells him that he has to confer with the other partners, but suggests how can they say no. You know, he pretty much thinks that's going to go great for Jimmy. But later that day, Jimmy celebrates with his fellow mailroom employees and Kim, and Hamlin stops by the party. And you think that Jimmy's going to get this promotion, everything really high for him, but then you realize that he's not going to get it because Hamlin tells him that it's just not today. That's why he's not going to get it, and that HHM will not be hiring him. So right there, we see why Jimmy hates Hamlin so much, why he has the beef with Hamlin that he does, why him and Hamlin don't get along very well. I loved seeing that flashback. By far the best flashback we've had on the show so far. It was so much information was given to us in a couple minutes, and I love that. That's something I love about Better Call Saul, is that they reveal so much in just a couple of minutes, and they're doing that so well, and I love that. So we go back to the present, and Kim is now unpacking in her old office after salvaging the Kettleman's case, because of course that's still going on. She's back in the good graces of HHM and has been allowed to return from exile on the dreaded East Wing, and Hamlin knocks on her door and convinces her to attend the firm's press conference. She agrees and stands demurely in the background as Hamlin announces the settlement of the Kettleman case. And to Jimmy's chagrin, the televised press conference is currently being broadcast to the reception desk of Sandpiper Crossing, which is an assisted living center where he has to come visit a client. And I really love what he says to when he says, I treat my clients like family. He really does. I mean, he tries to see their way. He tries to, help them as best as he can. And I love that Jimmy does that. I definitely think it's really great Jimmy does that. And I think, honestly, that really sums up his character and the show overall and how he is as a lawyer just really well, is that he honestly will treat you like family. And I think that was really well done when he said that. So Jimmy wraps up his meeting with Mrs. Landry. When it comes time to pay the bills, she realizes that she actually doesn't have enough money left from her monthly allowances to cover it. So Jimmy is about to leave with an IOU when he considers her predicament, which is monthly allowance. And he does a little investigating. He doesn't really know exactly what's going on, but it's just a little bit suspicious of what's going on here. So he compares the bills of several Sandpiper Crossing residents and uncovers multiple cases of gross overbilling. So basically, they overbilled, and he sees the groundwork of a lawsuit, and he convenes a group of seniors to point out the error in their monthly statements. Now, of course, these are seniors, so I was thinking, okay, maybe they just don't realize that they're doing that because they are elderly and maybe they have, dementia. I mean, they could have, dementia or something. Most times in elderly homes, they do have things. They do. And it's not uncommon for them to not have that. So I thought what they were going to do here is that Mrs. Landry has, dementia or something. That's not what ends up happening. Because we see that he heads over to Chuck's house, and I like how smart Jimmy was with this. I like that he didn't just think, okay, they have dementia or something. I like that he wasn't like that. Because he can tell there's something else going on there. I mean, they're pretty healthy. There's definitely something else going on. So he goes to Chuck's house to consult the files of some of his other Sandpiper Crossing clients, and he shares his discovery with Chuck. And Chuck has been unable to resist processing the paperwork that Jimmy asked him to store, and Chuck is shocked that he missed such egregious errors, but begrudgingly agrees that a class action lawsuit could be brought against the facility if Jimmy can establish a pattern of overbilling. So he returns to Sandpiper Crossing, but is banned from the premises, even though he knows that they did this. They know what he's doing, and they basically are going to ban him. So they've enacted a new policy in order to protect their residents from unwanted legal socialization, which honestly, yeah, it's very smart to do, but what you're doing is illegal. So either way, it's not going to end well for you. I knew Jimmy wasn't going to let them get away with this. There's no way he was going to. Even though he treats his clients like family, he's not going to let them get away with this. For example, the Kettleman's case. Even though he tried to be as caring as he was, he did definitely care for them, but he's not going to let you get away with a crime. He's not going to let you do that, which is something I love about Jimmy. So Jimmy argues with the facility manager. He hears the unmistakable sound of shredding from the adjacent office, spoliation, and Jimmy manages to talk his way into being allowed to use the restroom, where he furiously scribbles a demand letter on toilet paper, informing Sandpiper. It's a pretty funny scene. He's informing Sandpiper Crossing of pending litigation against them. He thrusts the document at the facility manager before he's tossed out, and it was a really funny scene because he's trying to tell them that I know what you're doing, but they're kicking him out. It honestly was really funny, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So he returns to the assisted living facility later that night to search their dumpster for the shredded documents, and he digs through the garbage and he receives a call from Rich Squigart, I think is how you pronounce it, and he is the attorney for Sandpiper Crossing, and he also happens to be an old acquaintance of Chuck's, which I thought was really cool, and honestly, after finding this out, I want to see some flashbacks with him and Chuck, because we saw how laid back Chuck was when he was in Jimmy's position, so maybe if we saw some flashbacks, it might actually give us more clues, because honestly, after seeing that flashback, that's really what I want to see, it's just more clues of what's going on here, and the thing I like about this episode the most is that as much as it focuses on Jimmy, it honestly is the Chuck episode. It really is. This focuses a lot more on Chuck than it did on Jimmy, which I really loved because we don't know too much about Chuck. And I've said this before, a lot of people have not been liking Chuck's character. But after this episode, I'm pretty sure they love Chuck's character. I personally love Chuck's character after this episode. I love Chuck's character since episode 5, but still. So basically, he warns Jimmy not to pursue legal action against Sandpiper Crossing, but as Jimmy climbs out of the dumpster, he discovers the shredded documents deposited neatly in a nearby recycling bin. So he arrives at Chuck's house with bags of shredded paper in hand, ready to get to work, and he spends the entire night trying to piece the documents back together. And the next morning, Chuck finds an exhausted Jimmy, still up from the night before, and you can see how much time Jimmy is spending on this case and how much he cares about it, and it's really warning him out, which I really love seeing. So Chuck steps away to make coffee and returns to find Jimmy asleep, and he's pretty impressed by how committed Jimmy is to this guy. I mean, who wouldn't be? He's so committed to this, like, it's crazy how committed he is to this. So Chuck decides to pick up where Jimmy left off, and by the time Jimmy wakes up, Chuck has assembled as he calls it, the smoking gun, which is an invoice for syringes from a medical supply company in Lincoln, Nebraska. So he's energized by the work, and Chuck gives Jimmy a long list of case laws to pull for research, and Jimmy, basically, he's really happy to be working with Chuck, and, because, what does Chuck usually do? He sits around all day, he just doesn't really get to do much, so you can see that Jimmy's really happy that Chuck is actually doing something. So Jimmy calls Kim at HHM and asks her to print the case law, and Chuck requested to bill into, and basically he wants to bill it into Chuck's account, and Kim proceeds, but worries that Chuck's involvement with Jimmy's case could violate Chuck's contract with HHM. Now, here's what I want to know. What is his contract with HHM? We don't know what's going on. We know that he left HHM when he had this whole mental condition with electricity. We know that happened. But what exactly did he do at HHM? Like, what was his contract? We know he's not working there anymore, so how does he still have a contract there? I don't understand that exactly. But I find that really interesting because it makes me more intrigued by that. So then, guess what we see after that? We get to see more of Mike's storyline after this, which I really love seeing, and it kind of makes me think like the next episode's going to be Mike-centric, because the last time we focused on a Mike story, the episode was Mike-centric. So we see Stacey, she arrives home from work, and Mike had been babysitting Kaylee, and he gets up to leave when Stacey pulls him aside to ask for advice. She shows Mike the envelope of cash from Matty's hidden suitcase and shares her uncertainty about what exactly she wants to do with it, because she doesn't know what to do with it, and because the expenses have been piling up and it's really starting to annoy her. She really doesn't know what she should do, and Mike encourages her to spend the money, and she's really relieved about it. She thanks him, and honestly, I think that is a good choice, is to spend the money. I think really that is the best choice. She does mention, though, that this money is really only a drop in the bucket. So it's not a lot of money. It's not really a lot of money, but they need to do something with it. So if they spend all this money, what exactly is going to happen? Here's what I'm going to say. If I can understand him wanting her to spend the money, she just needs to spend it wisely, because if this isn't a lot of money, who knows what could happen? Who really knows? And of course, this is eventually going to connect to Jimmy's storyline, so I kind of feel like something bad's going to happen here. I don't know what, though. So Rich receives a fax that includes a new proper demand letter from Jimmy and Chuck, and along with it, copies of reassembled Sandpiper Crossing billing statements. So Rich and his team arrive at Chuck's house to negotiate with the McGill brothers. This attorney duo has their attention, and Jimmy meets them at the curb and asks them to leave their electronics in the car because, Chuck and everything, which is the best thing to do. And he escorts them inside, seats them at Chuck's dining room table, ducks into the kitchen to get Chuck, whom he finds slumped and disheveled, and obviously, he wants him to look somewhat presentable, so he has to make him look, somewhat presentable, obviously. So Chuck admits that he doesn't know if he can really do this, and Jimmy assures his brother that, he assures him that he can do this, and you can understand, I honestly felt bad for Chuck in that scene. I really did, because, Chuck hasn't really done anything since he's had this condition, and since this has happened to Chuck, he really hasn't been able to have it to face anything. He hasn't been to really be worried about anything. So I honestly felt really bad from that scene, and I like how caring Jimmy is for him, because he tells him it's all going to be okay. He helps him into his jacket, and he restores Chuck's confidence and leads him into the dining room where Rich and his team await. So Rich lays out his proposal. Some Sandpiper Crossing residents were indeed overbilled, the result of an innocent accounting error. That's what he says it is. It's just simply an innocent accounting error. However, no, there's no way. There's no way it's just an innocent accounting error. There's definitely more to it. He offers $100,000 to, remember this, $100,000 to reimburse the residents and cover legal fees. $100,000. Like, does that not say does that not say, like, I'm trying to hide something? Like, clearly he's trying to hide something there. So Jimmy responds by referencing the syringe invoice from Nebraska, declaring pointedly that the inclusion of interstate commerce means Rico provisions kick in, which is why this episode is called Rico. So he's elevating the case to fraud and entitling his clients to much higher damages. And after a moment of intense private discussion with his team, Rich asks Jimmy what number he's got in mind, and Chuck is pretty silent, and he finally speaks up, and he's like, 20 million, we'll see you in court. And I'm just like, you know what? That was pretty awesome, because we haven't really gotten to see Chuck, like, do his lawyer thing, so honestly, he's really good at doing that, and you can see that Chuck has still got it. And honestly, I kind of feel like this season is going to end with Chuck getting his position back. I really do, just because they focused on it so much in this episode, and especially the way this episode ends, I definitely feel like they're starting to show us that Chuck is getting better, and we should, he's starting to show some sort of recovery from his condition. So after Rich and his team leave, Jimmy panics over Chuck's high damages demand. He's like, seriously, 20 million? What are you talking about? It is a lot of money that Chuck proposed for. So Chuck assures him that it's actually a conservative estimate for a multi-state federal class action lawsuit with Rico considerations at a penalty phase. So Jimmy falls quiet at last, catching a glimpse of the magnitude of this case, and Chuck emphatically lists their next steps, and Jimmy's ready to dive in. So basically, that's their plan. So then we see Mike. He visits the vet who stitched up his bullet wound, and this time Mike has a friend with him who is a shelter dog he adopted. While there for the dog examination, he asks the vet whether he still has the work available to which he previously alluded to. My question is, what exactly is this work that he's talking about? I don't know what the work is, but we'll see definitely what ends up happening there, because I don't really know how this is going to go, but I find that very interesting. So I don't know if that's connected to the whole money thing, but we'll see. Maybe he'll give the money to the vet. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he will give the money to, like, the vet or whatever. I really don't know what's happening there, but we'll see. So Jimmy stops by Chuck's house with boxes of new client paperwork and legal documents, and engrossed in a file, and impatient to get the cold provision documents he needs, Chuck marches out of the front door. This next scene, the last scene of this episode was amazing, I have to say. The scene was honestly amazing. I loved it. He marches at the front door, grabs Jimmy's car keys from the mailbox, retrieves the box of files from Jimmy's trunk. He's out of the house and not in pain. And Jimmy is amazed by this because, remember, any time that Chuck gets close to electricity, he, starts to, shock. He goes into, weird things start to happen to him. So he's calling quietly to his brother, and Chuck suddenly realizes where he is, and he's stunned. So I kind of feel like this is trying to show that Chuck's condition is definitely, he's doing it to himself. It definitely is psychological. It's a psychological condition. It's not something that he doesn't actually have it. I don't think he actually has this condition. I think that Chuck has just been so afraid of electricity that he's had these, weird allergic reactions to electricity. But now that he is back where he is, I think Chuck is really going to get over it now because he's no longer focused on that. And I think it's really trying to show that Chuck honestly is getting better, and that's awesome. The sad thing is, the better Chuck gets, my fear is that the worse Jimmy gets. Because as we know, Jimmy was rejected by HHM. I kind of feel like Chuck's going to take his position, but I definitely love where this is going because I don't think we've actually seen Chuck, not, have this condition and not think that he could do that. We can now see that he's doing it all to himself. It's not, he doesn't actually have this condition, which I really love seeing. I thought it was just a really well done episode. By far, best episode of the season. Absolutely loved it. I love the bonding between Chuck and Jimmy. Thought that was amazing to watch. Are we going to see more flashbacks of Rich and Chuck? I want to see more of their bonding overall. I want to see how that worked out because I find that to be very interesting to see what's going to happen there. Chuck and Jimmy, I kind of feel like they're going to work together and to bring down some clients. And honestly, I think we should have an episode where Chuck comes to work with Jimmy and basically they try to bring down. I kind of feel like that's what season 2 is going to be, is that those two work together to bring down some clients. I feel like that's where we're heading. Okay, what are they gonna do? What is Mike gonna do with this money? Because it seems like he's telling Stacey to spend the money, yet there's not a lot of money, and he's saying something completely different to his vet. So is he gonna give the money to the vet? What's really going on there? I don't know, but it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what actually ends up happening there, because I honestly don't know what's gonna happen there. But overall, guys, love this episode. Best episode of the season by far. Just every episode just getting better and better. And as I said, I love the little things they are revealing. Just the little hints of things that they're revealing are great to see. Just seeing how much more experienced Chuck. Because honestly, at the end of the day, Chuck is more experienced in this. As good as a lawyer as Saul is, and not Saul, I mean, as good as a lawyer as Jimmy is, Chuck is more experienced. And we need to remember that. So again, guys, this was my review for last week's episode. I know it's kind of irrelevant now, but let me know what you guys saw this episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for last week's episode of Flash. Not this week's episode, not the one that's airing tonight. Last week's episode of Flash. That will be my next review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.